say swishy? Squishy? Shawl, swishy shawl. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 49 of the Hilo Stitch podcast. I'm your host Kristen, and I am here to talk to you about what else? Knitting. I will also be talking about all things knitting and yarn related, and maybe not so knitting and yarn related. So if you didn't know me already, my name is Kristen Yannick. I'm a semi-retired knitting pattern designer, a knitting instructor, and all-around knitting enthusiast. I am podcasting to you from my home in the Maryland suburbs of Washington, D.C., where I live with my husband, 2 little boys, dog, cat, and now only 1 fish. I am sad to say that Emily has made her journey over the Rainbow Bridge. When I am not knitting, you can usually find me vegetable gardening, reading, baking, drinking wine, but it is mostly about the knitting, so let's go ahead and start talking about it. So I just recorded like half a segment that didn't get recorded, so that's great. On and off the needles, I did start a new project, but first we're gonna go ahead and talk about a project I finished before I get into that. So I have finished the big Nameless reversible shawl. If you have watched the last few episodes, you'll know I started this because I just wanted a big cozy squishy shawl. And did I say swishy? Squishy? Shawl, swishy shawl. And I had 2 skeins of Brooklyn Tweed's newest yarn tones that I wanted to play around with. So that is why I kind of started this. And I wanted it to be reversible. So I began this in some 2-color brioche. And then toward the end, I added in this skein of Brooklyn Tweed Shelter in a complementary color. So all of this is 2-color brioche. And then at the end, this is half fisherman's rib. So you can see here, I started just kind of transitioning the colors. And so this is what I would technically call the right side, but again, it is completely reversible. And so here's what it looks like on the back. So in transitioning these colors, I started adding the shelter in on this side to replace the main color. Then I used the last little bit of the darker purple tones for the contrast color on this stripe, and then both of the tones ran out. So I finished up with a half fisherman's rib, or a faux fisherman's rib, I'm not sure what you would call it, on the end. And so on the front, it just kind of looks like fisherman's rib. And on the back, it kind of has this look where the stitches just look a little squatty, like they're kind of wider than normal knit stitches. But still, either side could be the right side. I kept a I-cord kind of edging through the whole thing, and then bound off with just a kind of decorative bind off. It's a decreased bind off that blends sort of into the ribbing. So this is quote unquote the front and quote unquote the back. And I am quite happy with how this turned out. It could be a little bigger. I did have another skein at the shelter, but I was out of the tones and I didn't really feel like winding another skein. It's plenty large enough for my purposes. So wraps around nicely. Big squishy scarf / shawl for the fall and winter. It's nice and cozy, and it's plenty soft enough here as well. I don't know about going ahead with turning this into a pattern. I definitely could, and I made sure that if I wanted to, I took all the notes that I needed. So this is something that I've kind of been talking about the last few days on Twitter, just that, you know, there are a lot of big name designers out there who can release even something really simple, a really basic pattern, like it's kind of a plain top-down raglan, and can do really well with it. So I feel like this is something that maybe a different designer could probably release and do really well with. You know, the yarn company and yarn stores would probably sell kits, and it could go, you know, it could go far. But if I were to release it, I just don't have that, you know, that brand recognition to do that, and to kind of really likely make it a big success. So, you know, regardless of who the designer is, the same amount of work goes into making the pattern, but the success of the pattern can really vary. So I kind of have to decide, you know, if I put the effort into making this into a pattern, you know, am I going to even make enough money from that to pay my tech editor? I'm definitely going to have it tech edited. That's, you know, a responsible thing to do. I don't know. It's a lot of work. And again, I am semi-retired, so I'm still releasing patterns occasionally, just more as a hobby. But I do still kind of have to think about that. The investment of my time and in paying the tech editor, if that's really going to pan out, or if I'm just going to keep it as a shawl for me. So if you have an opinion, please share it in the comments down below. I would love to hear it, but I am personally really happy with this. I love how the colors ended up playing together, and I really do love that it's totally reversible. So that is a thing that I actually got off the needles. Woohoo! Good job, me. But then I accidentally started a new project. So in the last episode, I was kind of explaining the thought process that went into trying to figure out how to use some yarn from Fiber for the People that I'd originally bought to use together, the sapphire fingering weight and the Kalamata silk mohair, but they weren't working together in the Weekender, which is, no, what is the name of that pattern? They weren't working together in the Daydreamer, which is what I had planned them for. And then after going back and forth, I decided to pair the Kalamata with something else. So I did start that project. So now this is, and I'm just about to move it to bigger needles. So I put it on scrap yarn so I could get a picture, and then left it so I could kind of show you guys how it's going. So first, let's get a look at, hopefully it's not going to get too blown out. So what I'm doing is pairing this Durare Natura Ulysse in the Merlot colorway. So you can just see it's a kind of a winey reddish brown, and then the Kalamata silk mohair, which is kind of a slightly variegated Kalamata olive brown. So I'm putting them together, and I started off what I usually do when I combine one of the fluffy yarns with the non-fluffy yarn, is I just did the collar in the plain Ulysse without the silk mohair, and then I added it. So this is actually a project mashup. Originally I was planning to use the two for Melody Hoffman's tulip pullover, and I'm going to add a photo of that in here. So you can see this is mostly stockinette with a scalloped hem, which is fine. I love it. It's very simple, but that's a lot of stockinette, and I wanted to jazz it up a little bit. And then I remembered that she had another pattern that I liked, and that is called Offering of Trees, and I'll go ahead and put a photo in here. To be honest, these photos aren't great because what this sweater has is a really cute braid detail on the raglan lines, so I decided to add that here as well. So you can see it's just a really subtle, and it's on all 4 raglan lines. It looks like a cable, kind of a braid of stitches. It's very subtle, especially with the mohair, creating kind of a bit of a fuzzy quality to the fabric. So to do this, I purchased the tulip pattern, and I am using the tulip pattern for the yoke shaping, but I'm just adding that braid detail along the raglan lines because the Offering of Trees pattern is a bulky or chunky weight, and the tulip is kind of a sport DK weight. So rather than actually try to mash up the patterns, I'm really just copying that one detail from the pattern, which is this braid stitch. I may need to make some adjustments later because this is, you're making this braid stitch by pulling yarn up from several rows below. I'm trying to make sure I'm doing it nice and loose, but it is likely still compacting my rows a little bit. So I may need to adjust the length of the yoke at the end. So we'll see. The major challenge with this so far was doing the short row shaping over those braid stitches because the instructions for them are in working in the rounds. You're always working a right side, but when you're doing short rows, you need to work some wrong side rows. So that was a bit of a challenge, but I got it figured out somewhat quickly, and the kind of dark yarn and the fuzziness is hiding any mistakes I made. So for example, originally I was working the raglan increases and decreases right next to the braid, and then I switched to leave a stitch on either side. So in a more distinct yarn, you might be able to notice that, but you really can't tell. So I love how this color is coming out. It's so rich, and it also is because of the way that the silk and mohair are taking that color differently. It's almost looking marled, which I love. So I have not made it super far with this. But again, after you're done the yoke shaping, it's basically just stocking it all the way down until the hem. So I'm hoping to move kind of quickly. In theory, I am knitting this for National Knit a Sweater Month, Nani Swemo. We'll see. Again, it is a, just a raglan with some extra details, and it's mostly stockinette, so it's possible I could finish it in November, but we shall see. So that is new on the needles, and I actually forgot I'd started another project. I was out the other day on one of our chillier days, and I was wearing my, hang on, let me grab it. I was wearing my Love Lies Waiting cowl. So this is a 2-color brioche that, rather than 2 distinct colors, alternates holding a DK with, it's not actually a silk mohair, it's a Surrey silk, and then using it plain without the mohair, which means you get kind of 2 distinct colors, and you also get 2 distinct textures. And then it has this bit of detail at either the top or the bottom, depending on how you wear it, but I usually wear this part at the top, where one side is the Surrey silk, and then you can fold it over and it's just ribbing. So I was wearing that, and I was just thinking about how much I really liked this idea of creating a Surrey alpaca, of creating a 2-color brioche without actually using 2 colors, but using the silk mohair or the Surrey silk. And I decided I want to try it in a hat. So I grabbed a skein of, I believe, DK weight yarn that is in my stash. This is from Coast to Coast Yarn, and the colorway is called, I'm 99% sure it's called Douglas Fir, but I will double check. I don't think I did the show notes for the last episode. Okay, so I got even more show notes to do. I believe this is called Douglas Fir. This is from Coast to Coast Yarns. And you can see it's very, very variegated. So it's got lots of greens and browns. So it looks like, you know, kind of a winter forest with snow, which is really, really pretty. And my idea is to pair it with this. This is, I think this is different. This is called Alpaca Bloom. It's from Knit Picks. This is not the same as their regular Aloft. So this is 91% superfine alpaca, 9% nylon. And this one is, yeah, so this one is mohair silk. That's their regular Aloft. This was a special reserve they had, Alpaca Bloom. So this is more like the Surrey silk, except it's nylon. So I decided to pair it with this, which I found in my stash. I hope is enough for the hat. And the idea is, again, to do that kind of double layer on the brim. So I would make this extra long so it could be folded over and have, I originally toyed around with doing a provisional cast on, but it just seemed like too much work. Especially provisional cast on in the round. So I didn't, and my plan is just, I did a tubular cast on, and then my plan is just to, when the brim is as long as I want it, or I guess twice as long since I want to be able to fold it over, I'll put these stitches on hold and then pick up around the cast on edge and knit the same length in this for that double-sided brim. And then the rest of the project would be worked with alternating between holding this by itself and combining it with this. This is only 164 yards, I want to say, yes. And normally I think that'd be plenty for a hat, but since I'm doing that double edge and the brioche, I'm not sure if that's gonna work. So that's a gray. I also have somewhere around here a slightly different gray, and this is the Aloft again. So you can see this is just a little bit warmer and floofier because it's the alpaca, and this is definitely shinier. So I could try this instead. I just really want, really, I have this sitting in my stash. What else am I gonna do with it? I don't know. So kind of thinking about it. I mean, at the end of the day, if I swapped one for the other in the middle of the hat, would you probably be able to tell? No, I sincerely doubt it, but I'm gonna hold out hope that maybe this will hold up for the whole project. So I just have gotten, I guess, about 2.5, 3 inches into the brim. So I do want I'm going for maybe 5 to 6 inches for the brim, depending on how quickly I get bored with knitting in this 1x1 ribbing. And then we will see how it goes. My plan is actually, is if this works out the way I want, to actually release this one as a pattern and make it something special for my newsletter subscribers. So if you want to make sure that you are getting any information about that, you can sign up for my newsletter. Link is in the description box down below. So more news on that as we progress and see how my theory works out. Other than that, I still have my Andawa. I've finished the first chart. I don't know if that's the right. I finished the first section, which is basically one chart here, and have just started the next section, which is a variety of charts. And that, you can just barely see it starting here. But I'm realizing a problem with this. Well, a couple of problems. One is that the charts are spread out over several pages, and all that flipping is getting on my nerves. I think after a few tries, I'm going to be able to memorize the smaller charts I'm going to be able to memorize, and these two sections here are mirrors of each other. So I can probably just keep the one chart and kind of mirror it for myself when I'm looking at it. The other problem with this is that I'm realizing that this is a lot of, it's not fast knitting, it's a lot of charts, it's a lot of cable crosses, it's twisted stitches. And the back of this sweater is worked exactly like the front, which means once I get this whole front piece done, I have to go back and do the whole thing again for the back. And I know me, and I don't see that going well. I really want this sweater though, but I also really want a project that is, I'm not really thinking about, I'm just following the directions. And of course, you know, the Brooklyn Tweed pattern is always very well written, and it's nice not to really have to be thinking about while I'm knitting. So I could change up the back and do something a little different to make it easier, but then I'd have to be like thinking and planning, which I don't want to do. So I'm still, you know, putting a few stitches here and there on this, or I should say a few rows, but it is not going quickly, and I foresee it continuing to not go quickly as I continue working on it. All right, I think that's all I have for on and off the needles in this episode. All right, so instead of yarn to show you in this episode, I have something else that I think you might enjoy that I recently got. This is a set of knitting themed tarot cards. I will preface this by saying I'm not like a woo-woo person. I don't really believe in astrology or tarot or any of those things, but I do think they're kind of entertaining and can sometimes give you some food for thought. So the person who created this is Alex Tinsley. She used to be a knitting pattern designer as well. She did a lot of really great hat patterns. She retired a few years back. She now does, I believe, she has an Etsy shop and does pins and things that she designs. And so for this, she actually had a Kickstarter that I supported, and so I just got these in the mail. So it says, Cartomancy for yarn lovers. Consult the fates and find your woolly fortune with 36 full-color oracle cards from the first stitch to the finished object. Includes instruction booklet and card guide. So these are really cute, and I think will be a really fun conversation starter. Definitely, you know, for your next knit night, this would be a ball. So I want to show you first, just look how nice these cards are. This is a little bigger than probably a traditional deck of cards. It's got this gold around the edges, which is so cute. So these are nice and hardy. So I'm just going to take a peek at some of the ones that I think are the funniest. So it says the local yarn shop. Oh, these are so cute. You know, so it has things like yarn barf, the frog, the swatch. Of course, that's my personal favorite. The designer. There's one more that I thought was super adorable. No, I mean, all of these are adorable, but there's one in particular that I wanted to share. Oh, here it is. The last one, of course, the moth. So again, I'm not a real kind of a woo-woo spiritual, consult the stars and the fates and whatever, but these are just so adorable. Again, I think would really spice up your next knit night. Just fun to keep you entertained with these long fall and winter days and nights coming. Just something to put a smile on your face So I will include Alex's company's name is Wild Hunt. I will include a link to that in the description box down below, as well as in the show notes, so you can find these if you want. I put the lid on upside down, that's going to annoy me. Oh, and it has, for people like me who are not really, are just kind of looking at this for entertainment, it has instructions and what exactly you're supposed to do and what the cards mean. So also very handy. So again, I will include a link to that so you guys can pick up your own Knitter's Oracle if you want. It's really so adorable. So I have gotten back into some sewing. I was busy for a bit with making my sister her own version of the spooky season dress, but now I'm getting back into the project I'm working on, which is to create some staple pieces for my fall and winter wardrobe. And I have almost finished another project. So this, stand up a little bit. This is the Knox Pinafore. This is a pattern from Seamwork, which is an online resource for sewists. Lots of patterns, lots of classes, sew-alongs, things like that. And I am currently subscribed to them for about $9 a month, which includes 1 credit a month to download a sewing pattern. If you're familiar with sewing patterns, they're usually at least $14. That's kind of like the lowest end. So that's really a good deal. So this is a pinafore, which I understand to mean like overalls, but not pants. So definitely you're going to be wearing something underneath this. It has big, deep pockets. And the last thing that I need to do for this is to finish off the neckline. So it has what's called a bias binding, trim, something around the neckline, which uses bias tape, which is basically a strip of fabric cut on the bias, which we know from knitting basically means diagonally, that makes it extra stretchy. I originally tried to make my own bias tape for this. I got a bias tape maker. I tried cutting my strips of fabric and sewing them together, and it just turned out looking like garbage. Maybe that's something I can do in the future, but for this, I would like to get this done. So I just went ahead and ordered some bias tape. I ordered it off Amazon. It's just like a cotton twill, kind of all-purpose bias tape, which will be used to finish off and stabilize the neckline, and then this will be done. So I made this project in some corduroy, so you can see close up, it's corduroy, which means it's pretty heavy, especially on the sides where you've got these big pockets. My only question when working with corduroy is really, when you are sewing, there's a lot of pressing involved to get things, to get the fabric to lay flat so that you can sew it, seam it. But you're not really supposed to iron corduroy because it can kind of crush the wales, the little kind of like ribbing. And so you can actually kind of see here some spots where I pressed the iron and it kind of makes the fabric shiny. But I don't really see how you're supposed to do the project without ironing. So I am hoping after a good wash that will all even out. We shall see. I have to say, I bought this thread online to try to match this fabric, and I did a pretty good job. It really blends right in, so you can hardly see any of my stitching, which is probably good because it's not super even. This is my first time working with corduroy, first time really working with a heavier fabric, other than, I showed you guys a few episodes back, I seamed, or I rehemmed an old corduroy skirt. That's, that's a lot different than doing a whole project out of a heavier fabric. So definitely some of my stitching is not super straight. but I think this is going to be really cute over, you know, a blouse, even a light thin sweater. So I really have done absolutely everything. I even did the hem. So I really just need to finish up that neckline, which I'm kind of hoping to do today. But let's see, it's 1:30. I have to leave to pick my kids up at 3, so probably that's not going to happen. But we'll see. There's always tomorrow. So this has been my big sewing project, and it is almost done. And I will definitely show it off finished and modeled in the next episode, which will be episode 50. Woo! So that has basically been the only sewing project I have been working on. I showed you guys the last time I do have a fabric stash that I have managed to build up somewhat quickly, and I have several more projects in the pipeline, so we will see what is coming up next. Let's see, so far I've done a couple of dresses and a skirt and a couple of kind of sleeveless tops, so maybe we'll be moving on to try some pants. I don't know, I do have a pair of pants in that kind of plan, but I think they maybe are kind of an intermediate level, and I'm not sure I'm ready to try that yet. The other thing that I recently decided, so like late last year maybe, I was watching the Fiber for the People podcast, which is my favorite video podcast that I love to watch. And the host, Taylor, was wearing these really cute velvet joggers. And basically the whole comment section was just people being like, where did you get those? So they were from Anthropologie maybe, but by the time that, you know, I was looking for them, they were long gone, or at least not available in the size and color I wanted anymore. So I was looking through some of the patterns that are available on Seamwork, and they had a pair of joggers, and I was like, wow, I could make my very own velvet joggers. So that's something I would really like to try doing soon, but velvet is one of those fabrics that if you get like the cheap stuff, it's really junky, but it's so hard to tell when you're shopping online. And I really haven't found anybody nearby carrying any velvet. So if you have any tips for buying velvet, how to make sure it's, you know, it doesn't have to be super fancy, but I don't want that stuff that, you know, just kind of looks cheap when it's all sewn up and washed. So if you've bought velvet and have any suggestions, something like really nice and plush. So for example, I recently bought some velveteen, but that's different. That's more like a firm fabric. This is, I want something that's more, you know, fluid and drapey and just really cozy. So if you have any suggestions, I would love to hear them. All right, I do have a really quick pattern drop in this episode. So that is, you might remember in the last episode, I was telling you that the Murciélago Pullover was available for pre-order, and the pattern has now been released. Let me just drop a couple of photos in here. So this is a side-to-side pullover knit from one cuff to the other with some cable details on the sleeves and across the front and back neck. The pattern includes 10 sizes. It is done in worsted weight yarn, this Hudson and West Forge, which is a merino Corriedale blend that is very soft, can wear right next to the skin, but also quite sturdy. It was really lovely to work with. So that pattern is now available. It is in my Ravelry shop, it is in my Payhip shop, and if you are a fan of the Love Crafts, which is kind of divided into like Love Knitting and Love Crochet, it is also available over on Love Knitting. I will include links to all of those in the description box down below. If you are looking for a super, super cozy worsted weight sweater to snuggle up in for the rest of the fall and the winter. I think this is a great bet. Really, the sleeves kind of keep you interested with the cabling. Once you split for the body, the cable detail is easy to memorize, and it's mostly stockinette, so that can be more of a couch knitting project. And then it finishes off with just a simple hem that you pick up on the front and the back, framed by a fickle braid or lateral braid or a Latvian braid or whatever you want to call it. And then you just finish it off by sewing the shoulders as wide or as narrow as you want to get the neckline you want. So I think it's a fun and interesting project. I've been wearing my sweater all the time. In fact, I think it probably needs to be washed again before I am able to wear it again, because I have been wearing it all over the place, and I've always gotten lots of compliments on it as well, which is also nice to hear. So again, that pattern is now available, and you can find it in any of the shops that I have linked in the description box down below. So it seems like we are somehow into November already. October's over, and that's my favorite month of the year, so I'm always a little sad about that, but lots of good things to look forward to. Kids had a lot of fun on Halloween. I'm gonna go ahead and add a photo of them in here. So JJ wanted to be Dumbledore. He said he wanted to honor him after he had, spoiler alert, died in the 6th book. So there really weren't any Dumbledore costumes for kids, other than like super elaborate, really expensive ones, which I did not want to buy for him to wear once. I want to buy a $60 costume. So what I bought for him was a Gandalf costume, which is like a more reasonable $25. And then I got him a pair of kind of Dumbledore kind of glasses to go with it, and a wand. Now, this is just my irresponsibility. The photo on the product page when I ordered the costume, and on the package of the costume itself, showed, this kid dressed in this costume with a beard. So I assumed it came with a beard. So I opened it Halloween morning, and it did not have a beard. Should I have opened it earlier? Yes, almost certainly. So my husband's like, I'll just go get one at the Halloween store. I'm like, it's Halloween morning. They're not going to have a beard left for a kid, which of course they didn't. So I went on looking online. How can I make a DIY beard? And what I came across was some suggestions for use, because originally my thought was I'll use some of the like fake spiderweb Halloween stuff. It won't look great, but it'll be fine. But then I did this research, and one of the posts suggested using roving. I was like, perfect, I have roving. So I went into my fiber stash and I found my Coradial roving. Cormo roving, that's what it is, not Coradial. Oh, gosh, so soft and squishy, I love it. As you can see, it is the perfect color. There is a little bit of veg matter in it, so I don't know if that's very authentic or not. So what I did was just kind of stretch this out. I've got some double-sided, it's called fashion tape. So if you're wearing like a neckline that wants to keep moving around and you want it to sit still, it's like a double-sided tape, so that you can, put one piece on your bra and the rest on, so it doesn't do that. So I already had some of that. I put that on a face mask that also fortunately was white. And that is what he wore. And it actually worked pretty well. I don't know if his face was hot. He didn't complain or anything. But that was definitely not in my plan of things to do on Halloween. I had already invited my dad and sister to come over because it was a Sunday. I thought it'd be nice to have a little pre-trick-or-treat, party-ish thing with them. So I'd already invited them over to do that. I had spooky foods I had to make. But fortunately it worked out, and JJ was very happy with his costume. Ollie, as you saw, was a ghost. He just, first thing he told me he wanted to be was a BART subway train, and I was like, there's no way I can make you be a train. You have to be something that is humanesque. I said, I can make you a BART train conductor. He was a train conductor last year, and then he decided he wanted to be a ghost. JJ was a ghost last year, so this was very simple. Use the same sheet. Again, I put some double-sided tape on his head because the sheet kept slipping either backwards or forwards. The eyes weren't in the right place, and he was happy as a clam. Everyone thought he was adorable. They were like, look at little Charlie Brown ghost. This is exactly what he looked like. They both had so much fun trick-or-treating. They got so much candy. We always go with a friend of mine and her kids that live a few blocks away. All the kids were just having so much fun since, you know, they had to miss trick-or-treat last year. They were thrilled. And so it was a great Halloween, I think. I had originally planned to dress up as a dead bride because my wedding dress has been sitting there for 10 years doing nothing. It doesn't fit. So I was not a dead bride. I was very surprised, to be honest, that it didn't fit because I actually think that I'm either the same or even a little bit less, way less than I did then, but you know, I had 2 kids, so things shift around, and it did zip up past my waist. But like, I don't know, my back is broader or something. I don't know. It wouldn't zip up anymore, so I just went as a witch, which is easy. I just wore all of my black clothes, and last year I got some kind of black cobweb netting stuff to just put over top that makes it look very dramatic, and wore my witch's hat, and so we all had a good Halloween time, and now we are getting ready for Thanksgiving. I usually host, but my sister recently bought a new house, so she's going to host this year. I am still making pies. That's my favorite part. Well, no, my favorite part is eating the pies, but somebody's got to make them first. So she bought a house that is, like I mentioned in a previous episode, is 175 years old in Boonesboro, Maryland, that was used as a hospital during the Civil War. So may or may not be haunted, who knows? It's definitely, it's a unique house. She has lots of room, so you know, having kids and dog and everything else there will all fit, and that will be nice. And of course I will go over perhaps a little earlier in the day and help out with some cooking. She always, I said, I've been hosting Thanksgiving, but I don't eat meat, so she usually brings a turkey over and cooks a turkey anyway, and so she'll be shifting locations this year. And then before you know it, it will be the Christmas season. I love Christmas so much, but things are just going too fast. My kids are growing too old. I'm getting too old. I had to order reading glasses yesterday. Although it's not really so much reading. It's that if I am trying to knit or sew and the lighting is dim, I really have a hard time seeing. And it didn't used to bother me before. So it's got some mild reading glasses. And hopefully that will help with that a little bit. Although it would also help if I got another lamp for my studio. So I have this, desk lamp, and then I have an overhead light, but that's really harsh. I don't like to use that. So I really need to get like a floor lamp kind of over by my sewing machine. That would probably help. One of these days we'll get around to that. So not only that, but I got an email this morning about my 20th college reunion. So I just keep getting older. I don't understand why this is happening to me. I had a really good weekend this past weekend. The kids got their first COVID shot. Thank God. I will just be so much calmer once they are both, especially the little one, are vaccinated, and I'll just feel much calmer. They've been really good about wearing masks, which surprised me. JJ is on the spectrum, and Ollie has a variety of his own issues related to, he has the George syndrome, So I expected a lot of pushback from both of them about the masks when all that first started, and they really surprised me. They did really well. But you know, it's a lot to expect kids to wear masks all day and to understand about keeping their distance from people and things like that. So I'll just rest so much easier once they are fully vaccinated. So they got their first shot over the weekend. And I guess they said they will be sending like a follow-up email closer to the time that they should be getting their second shot, and then they'll be hopefully fully vaccinated by Christmas. Unfortunately, my husband's younger brother got married in a civil ceremony during the pandemic, or during the height of the pandemic. But you know, he and his wife really want to do like the church wedding and the big party, obviously, which they're going to be doing in December in Lima. And so I told my husband, you go, it's your brother, that's fine, but I'm not going to bring the kids on, you know, bring our unvaccinated children on multiple airplanes to a country in South America that has like one of the highest death rates in South America. That just seems like a poor idea. And of course now it looks like they are actually going to be fully vaccinated right in time that they could go. But of course my husband has already bought his tickets and made plans and things. So the kids got their first shot, and then I got to go out to brunch with my sister, my goddaughter, and my aunt. I haven't seen my aunt or my goddaughter since before the pandemic. So I went out to this really cute place in Baltimore. My goddaughter / cousin lives in around Locust Point in Baltimore, which is an area that used to be very industrial and now has been more built up. So I got to see her house and hear about some of her wedding plans. She's getting married in September. So overall, it was just, it was a really nice weekend here. And it's so nice to finally be able to do some things that are like the before times again. And I really hope people will just, you know, keep up with vaccinations, get the kids vaccinated, and we can start shifting back toward some semblance of normal. But that is about all that's been going on around here. Thank you so much for joining me for episode 49 of the Hilo and Stitch podcast. Show notes with links to everything that I talked about in this episode can be found at mediaperuana.com/Hilo and Stitch. Special thank you to my Patreon patrons who help keep this podcast and the whole Media Peruana Knits channel up and running. So if you are interested in some behind the scenes and perks and freebies, you can find more information about supporting the podcast at patreon.com/mediaperuana. Here on YouTube, if you enjoyed this episode or any of the other content here on the Media Peruana Knits channel, I would encourage you to subscribe, really pushing toward that 1,000 subscriber mark. Give this episode a thumbs up, share it with friends, leave a comment. All of those things will help expand the reach of the channel. If you're looking for me on social media, you can find me on Ravelry and Instagram as Media Peruana, and I will see you next time.